Hi, this is Hannah.
And this is Charu.
Welcome to episode 4, Tipping the Scale. Today we're going to be talking about mental health, work-life balance, burnout, and a lot of different things.
Yay.
Woohoo!
Woo. Okay. Well, is it woo? I don't know. Anywho's, so last week we talked about the differences between high school and college, and this week we wanted to go a little bit deeper into some of the difficulties that we have faced of maintaining a healthy balance between school and life. So to start off the conversation, what are some things that you have found that we have needed to balance once we got to college?
For me specifically, one big one was work. In freshman year, I started working I think, towards second semester, and then I got a new job the beginning of first semester of sophomore year and kept that until the end of that semester just because a lot of things were going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then I had been living on my own my first year. First year I was in the dorms, and then second year was cut short due to corona, but I was living in the apartments. And so living on my own is like a huge new learning curve, not learning curve, but like something that I needed to learn how to
Yeah.
do. And
Mm-hmm.
so that came with like cleaning my own dorm, cleaning the bathroom, and like getting groceries, cooking in the apartment, and doing laundry, doing all like these new things, or not necessarily new, but doing more things than if I was just living at home.
Yeah.
And then also had to balance with like um, school, studying, classes, having friends or a social life. What else? I think those were the main things.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, a lot of things have changed now since I am living at home. There is a pandemic and everything's online. Um, but it's still somewhat the same, where it's still like you
Yeah.
have to care about classes, your social life,
Mm-hmm.
and your clubs. And oh, yeah, clubs. I mean, clubs is always there since
Right.
before, but
Yeah.
and yeah, like sleep, it's always there before. Um, and staying on top of studying and all that. But I feel like it's a lot harder to balance that at home and
Mm-hmm.
online because you have to put more like effort and intentionality into it. It's more effortful,
Yeah.
I guess. Is that a
Yes.
word? Yes, that's
I,
a word. Oh my gosh, my brain. But yeah, but that's what I've found to for me that I have to. Oh my goodness, my brain. Words are hard. But yeah, that's what I've found that I've been trying to balance. Yeah. How about you?
I think a lot of it is the same. It's just
Mhm.
my things happen sort of in a reverse order where um, I have been living at home for the past, or for the first like 2 years of college. And
Mhm.
then I got into this research program and I needed to move out to stay closer to the university I'm conducting research at. So now I'm doing all of the things related to apartmenting. So the cooking, the cleaning, trying to actually go to bed on time, which hasn't been too difficult because I'm like hecka tired by the end of the day. But just trying to, I guess, do things that normally I wouldn't be compelled to do because I know that my mom would probably be already taking care of those things and I can just look forward to having a nice meal, even though I would be helping, but like not pressured into thinking like, oh, at this time I need to go and start preparing this so that I can have a meal at 8. And along with that, of course, like trying to keep up whatever social life is possible with the pandemic going on. So like trying to keep in touch with friends
Mhm.
and taking time for myself by watching movies or YouTube, etc., etc. With living at home, a lot of it was trying to make sure that even as I kept my focus on my academics, I still felt the need to help out around the house. So like doing chores and like helping in the kitchen and the cleaning and things. Those were some things that I had to balance. And of course, club activities, like you mentioned too, that has been something that's been persistent since the beginning of college. Work-wise, not very much because I haven't really worked. I've had a very lenient and flexible schedule with whatever tutoring things that I've been doing, so it hasn't been too difficult. But I think when it came, once I joined a lab on campus, that I felt like I wanted to dedicate more time towards that, but I still needed to balance all of my other classes because at this stage as an undergrad, those classes have a little bit more weightage than the lab work that I'm doing because those classes have, I mean, yeah, I guess, like I said, a little bit more weightage. So having to balance those two things and try to put in enough effort into the research side of things versus maintaining the grades and going to lectures and studying for tests and taking notes. All of those things take a lot of time and energy to really focus on.
Yeah, I think I left out with the research lab too, because I got into lab. When did I get into it? It was spring.
Spring of
Yeah,
freshman year?
spring of sophomore.
You were in a
Huh?
lab after? No, you were in a lab before I was. You joined a lab before I did.
Yeah.
Because I joined fall of sophomore year, but like September or October.
Huh?
I'm like 90% sure you joined a lab before I did. Or
Like I'm
maybe not.
gonna look through my emails because this is gonna bother me if I don't figure it out. Let me see. Scroll all the way down. Okay, scroll all the way down. Yeah. Spring 2020.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like beginning
Huh.
January, December.
Oh, I thought you joined before I did. Okay, never mind. I guess I'm imagining these conversations. Like we had the conversations, but I feel like I'm thinking of them happening way before they
Yeah.
actually did that. Okay.
But yeah, that's also something that like I forgot that I had to balance. But I didn't forget about it because I'm still doing it. But like I don't know why that didn't come across my mind that I have to balance that too.
Yeah.
Moving on to our second question. Um, so how do we stay like talking about schoolwork? How do we stay focused and less distracted when we're studying or doing anything relating to school?
So I think we both kind of follow the same idea of the Pomodoro technique, which is basically you're studying in 25 to 40-minute chunks, and then you take a smaller break in between, and you do that about 3 or 4 times, depending on how long it is, and then you take a slightly longer break. That has been something that's sort of worked for me. I don't really stick to that same exact pattern because when I get into the zone of working, I hate having to get out of that for a little bit because it takes me so much longer to get back into it. So if I've started something and I feel like I'm at a good pace, then I just keep going until I get sick of it. Which might not be the healthiest thing, but it allows me to get my work done.
Yeah.
And I tend to always have something playing in the background. Um, it's usually some sort of soundtrack or like lo-fi beats or classical music or something, just because I like having something in the background to not to keep my mind engaged, but so that it's not just silence. Sometimes I'll put on like coffee house music because those, like, even though those have lyrics, I'm able to shut those out of my brain and just have that in the background as chatter. Same with podcasts too. If it's like a podcast episode that I've already listened to, I will have that going in the background and I'll just work until I get through that entire episode. So those are usually like an hour, hour and a half, and I'll just have that in the background playing. So it's just like busy chatter behind me, but I'm still able to focus on my work. But that does depend on what class I'm currently like studying. So it's like map and things, and it's usually just like instrumental music. If I'm typing an essay, like I can have whatever going on in the background. And I've been able to make it work.
Mhm.
Um, and I once quarantine started where it was just everything was online, I would try to call up a friend and have like productivity sessions because that way we would keep each other accountable. And that's really when I used the like 25 to 30 minutes of work and then like a
Mm.
little bit of a break in between so we can actually like converse, you
Mhm.
know. Um, but I think those, and also like trying to, I like having something going on my phone. So like the Flora app, and things that like keep your phone occupied is helpful so that I'm not always just reaching for my phone at all
Mhm.
times because that's something that can, like, I tend to do. Like anytime a notification pops up, unless my phone is like upside down or if I'm ever like not fully invested in the work that I'm doing, then my like hands just gravitate towards my phone because I'm like, I don't really want to be doing this work, so I'll just sit on my phone. Which isn't it's not great. Yeah. And also like trying to keep either phone occupied or like charging that's at a charger that's not on your table or like outside of your room. Those are all things that I've heard, but I don't personally use.
Mhm. Yeah, I think for me it's really similar. Yeah, so mainly do the Pomodoro technique when I don't really have motivation to do work, which is a lot of times. And I use, like you said, Flora, the app, um, where I just set the timer on my phone, and it basically does not allow me to touch any other apps on my phone. And I have a Chrome extension called Forest where it basically does the same thing, but I have to manually input the websites to block during that time of like focus. Um,
Mhm.
and um, yeah, and what other things that I've found to be helpful is in person, I really like to study with people who actually would study, um, which helps me keep it's a form of accountability because yes, I understand it doesn't work for a lot of people or it doesn't work for specific people, but it kind of works for me.
Mhm.
It this just depends on who I'm studying with.
Yeah.
Um and yeah, I'll do the same like timer and then break. And then being at home and virtual, I've also found that it works too with like Discord and we I just find someone to call or find a friend and be like, "Hey, let's study," and then hop onto a Discord server or a private um, messaging, and then start a timer. And then
Mhm.
what I've also found to work is if you're in like a study session channel in a Discord server, you can also like there's a timer bot, but it's always offline, but it's really helpful because it will ping you after you're done and it pings everyone too. And then you can also there's a music bot where you can listen to music together.
I see.
So you're not listening to things on your own because
Mhm.
I feel like for me that's more distracting because I'm like finding different things to listen to or like I would be like, "Oh, they're not listening to my audio," or I if I want to watch something but I can't pause the music because it's
Mm.
going on for the other person like
Mhm.
yeah, so it just forces me to not listen to anything else besides the music that we're listening to. And that's normally like lo-fi music. And normally I would just listen to lo-fi music or piano music or
Mhm.
coffee, like cafe music that's like jazz music.
Right.
Um, and that's what I would put on as a group if
Mhm.
nobody has objections. But yeah, I found those to be really helpful, especially in times where you don't feel like you're in the groove of working.
Yeah.
And then I find that a lot of people during this quarantine time and lockdown time, we don't have that motivation and that groove anymore.
Mhm.
because it's hard. You're always in the same place, so it's
Yeah.
just it's hard to find that. Um, but yeah, that's what I've been doing. That's what has been working for me.
Mhm.
Yeah, it might not
Yeah.
work for a lot of people, but it might work for some. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And if you're ever interested in the type of music that Hannah and I are listening to, we've got a whole playlist going on our YouTube channel now. Subtle plug.
Yeah,
But
I forgot I made that.
um, Hannah put together a playlist, and I have yet to add things to it. But that is available to all of y'all to hop
Mhm.
on. And on the note of the Flora app and Forest extension, so the Flora app is the free version of the Forest app on the iPhone, but Forest is available for a free download on all Android things.
Mhm.
So it's really cute. You get to like grow your own little trees and things. And if you like exit the app, it kills the tree. And so you have that slight tinge of guilt of like wanting to leave the app. So yeah, that's something that I've been using. Also, like I think another thing on keeping our phones like not at our reach, like filming time lapses of you studying or working, it's it's mildly satisfying to watch back afterwards because it's like, wow, I actually did all of that.
Mhm.
And it's really cool. I've been doing that a lot recently where I'll just prop up my phone and like have a time lapse of me going either taking notes or like typing out an essay or something like that. And it's really nice just watching back at it and be like, wow, I was productive.
Yeah, like I didn't know, I never knew that that was a thing that I can do to like put my phone away until I stumbled across like a TikTok turned Instagram reel. And I was like, that's actually genius. Like, that's so cool. You get to
Yeah.
rewatch and see how productive you were, but
Hmm.
then at the same time have your phone going like out of reach. And
Exactly.
so cool. Yeah. I
Yeah.
have yet to try it because I just feel like if I watch back at it, I'll just be like, dang, I need to clean my desk. But it's not that messy. But I'll probably be like, yeah, I need to reorganize that desk.
That's another sort of motivation,
True, to clean.
to clean, yes.
Yeah.
Um, and also on another note, I just thought of this, but like having water by you is very convenient
Mhm,
um, because you're not taking yourself away from your like workspace just to go grab a drink of water because you're thirsty.
mhm.
And it also ensures that you're hydrated because sometimes we get lazy and we don't feel like going and getting ourselves water.
Yeah.
I have fallen to that several times and I've gotten yelled at by my parents for not drinking enough water. So I'm like, okay, I'll just keep a bottle of water with me.
Yeah.
Um, but I was on like a call at one point and the person hosting the call was like, any if you're working, any distraction basically removes you from that zone and like adds 2 more minutes to you trying to get back into that zone because your mind has been taken away from what you were working on. And so trying to get back to it and focus to the level that you were at is like an additional 2 minutes. So trying to limit as many external distractions can really help. I think, at least for me, has helped me stay at the like as much as possible focused on my schoolwork. So water, snacks, phone away, all of those things have been, yeah, my main tips.
Mhm.
Um, on that note, I think the rest of our conversation is going to be um, more focused on how we find the balance in things and what we feel about burnout and mental health. So moving on to our next thing, how how have we been able to find our balance, or wait, let me rephrase it. How have we been able to balance all of these things and or keep ourselves in check?
Yeah, I think one big one is just finding our limits. It's not an easy thing to do, and it take different situations someone to find their limits. Because for me, I'm still finding out my different limits with different things that I'm doing. Um, yeah. And one thing that, again, my parents had told me, especially going into college, is just taking it at a pace that I know I can handle and taking it slower and not necessarily fast paced or not necessarily too slow, but just not the same pace as everybody else if it's the
Mm.
pace that I cannot handle. Um, like my first semester, I only took 13 hours. Um, I was, I think I was about to take more, but my dad was like, wait, this is your first semester in college. You don't necessarily know what
Mhm.
college is like just yet. So take this semester slow. It's okay. Like, you're not in a rush or anything.
Mhm.
So, like, just take 13. You're still full time student at 13. I think full time is 12 or 9.
Full time is 12.
Is 12? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And yeah, like if 15 hours is too much, you can take less. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take 13. But after that, I'm like, okay, I think 13, I could handle 13. So I'm going to hit it up back to 15. So I hit it back up to 15 and now I just stuck with 15.
Mm.
Um, and I think that's one thing I see a lot of freshmen doing where they go full out automatically when they go in with like 18 or like, I mean, it depends on your degree plan and depends on
Yeah.
how, yeah. But I notice a lot of freshmen get burnt out after the first semester because they haven't really fully came out of their high school like working or like high school
Right.
workload and
Mhm.
haven't necessarily anticipated the difference in college. And then a lot of times they think that's around the same, so
Yeah.
then they just take on so much and then at the end it's just they're so burnt out.
Mm.
But then they have to keep going because they feel like they need to keep going.
Right. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think that doesn't help because they'll just constantly feel burnt out.
Mhm.
Like for me, when I did summer classes after freshman year and then after sophomore year, and that burnt me out. Like I knew after the first time, like I knew that that was not okay, but I still did it the second time because I needed to. So yeah, but I also had to learn how to say no to things.
Yeah.
And before college, I was like, I didn't really know how to say no to a lot of things, or I didn't know that I should have said
Mm.
no. I just
Yeah.
said, "Oh, let me do it. Like, I can do it." But
Mm.
then I think that's what burnt me out quicker. But then in
Mhm.
college, like, I think I began to realize, like, okay, this is what's burning me out. This might burn me out, so I'm probably gonna say no to this.
Yeah.
And yeah, and setting a routine is was really important too. And set aside time for to relax and to not do schoolwork or yeah. So that's how I hope that kind of answers the question. I think that answers the question.
Yeah, no. I also am like thinking along the same lines of knowing what your limits are, I think is a like probably the most important thing. And
Yeah.
I feel like everything else kind of falls under that.
Yeah.
Um, but by knowing your limits, and obviously this comes over time, like you're not going to, you will realize like, okay, I know like you were saying, I know I can handle 13, so maybe I can push it to 15. To me, it was like a limbo between 15 or 18 because of like honors college and other like
Mhm.
requirements that the university puts on like scholarships and whatnot. So it's like the number of hours you take, it depends on a lot of things. Of course, you can, if it's becoming too much, you can always appeal. I think that is a process that most universities have where it's like, hey, I can't do this. I will still be on track to graduate, but taking 15 hours is too much. There's ways that you can it's important to know to what extent you can push yourself to where you're still doing okay, I guess is like a very generalized way to put it, because you don't ever want to feel like overly stressed. And that's something I feel comes part and parcel with the college experience of just having that like stress of trying to get things done. And I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it, saying that college is the most wonderful thing, because sometimes it's stressful. But knowing it also helps, like knowing what classes you're going to need to take and trying to divide those up to where you're, taking some difficult classes and some less difficult classes, and not being dumb and trying to put the three of the hardest classes all together in one semester. It just, that like last semester was just not good for me. And that's because I was like, it's fine, I can do it. And I did do it, but did I feel good doing it? No. So knowing, and I knew that going in that it wasn't the best idea, but I was like in my head, I need to do this now so that I can stay on track
Mm-hmm.
to graduate next year. But all that being said, know your limits, know what you can handle and what you can't
Yeah.
handle, and be willing to say no to things that are pushing you above your limits.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got an exam the next day, maybe don't go to the event that all of your friends are going to if you feel like you need to study. Or if you need to take the weekend off, take the weekend off. You don't have to do things. You can take that time to relax if you haven't been able to take that time over the week. Another thing that I've found for myself is using my weekends wisely. And I'm one, if things have like started piling up over the week, I will try to get all of that wrapped up over the weekend and not push it off into the next week, because I know that the way my classes are going to work, that they're just going to continue piling up, and then I'll be stressed by the time the next exam comes around. So I like schedule time for each of my classes over the weekend and make sure I get my work done. And of course, I was also using the weekends to like chill and relax, but I wouldn't just do that because I knew that I needed to get work done.
Mm-hmm.
And also maintaining, I think going back to that time of like taking time to relax, like that's been something that I haven't been the best at, because I'm a very, once I start working, I'm going to continue working, and then it's
Mm-hmm.
like midnight and I'm like, I should go to sleep. So trying to take time out of your day to like, okay, I'm going to take this half an hour to maybe go outside if the weather is nice, because I enjoy going outside. Or read a book for a little bit, or do some art, or play some music. Like those are things that I kind of schedule. I don't necessarily schedule it into my day, but I try to take a little bit of time out of my day to put that. I think that kind of goes into our next question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, what do we do to rest? So just to reiterate what I just said, I like doing a lot of art, music, creative things, talking to my friends, sometimes going on walks or reading. I've also been getting into journaling a lot recently, which has been nice. That has been a new thing over the past, since quarantine started, actually. I've been slightly more frequent than I have been in the past, which is like an entry once or twice a month, which is like better than none at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are my rest days or time activities.
Yeah, I think for me, what I found myself doing is actually just having a day where I do other things besides school. And I find that to be like Fridays. Yeah, where I don't do schoolwork. I do schoolwork if needed, urgent, and I need it to be done on Fridays. Do I have anything due today? No. Okay, just gotta double check because sometimes I.
Another thing to add about our keeping ourselves in check,
um.
have a planner.
Yeah.
Because Hannah just took the past like couple minutes trying to figure out if she had an assignment due today / this weekend.
Yeah. because these assignments do not appear on the syllabus. They only show up once my professor inputs it into the website. Oh no. Good thing I caught it. Color highlighter. Yellow. I color code my tasks.
We love it. We love an organized queen.
Am I organized? I don't know. Who knows?
We love a color coding queen.
It's not that much. 5 classes, 5 highlighters. There you go.
Hey, it's still something.
Okay, yeah. Back to my point. You take one day. If it's not Friday, if I have something to do on Friday, I'll take like a Saturday. Because I figured that my brain kind of needs that, especially during this time. And I just sit and just things that I do to rest. So for me, that includes maybe if my parents are out or my brother is out running, I would like play my guitar or my ukulele and or just sing or sing while playing guitar or ukulele or just sing to like karaoke's online or just sing and belt to whatever I'm listening to. Just because I don't want to disturb anybody or yeah. And sometimes I'll call friends, have game nights with friends, and watch movies or shows or watch some YouTube or watch some streamers. And one big one is for me as a Christian, I would spend time with God. So that would be like listening to worship music and journaling, or reading the Bible, and yeah. And I think I actually did some sort of not a write up. What is it called? Some sort of like post on our campus ministry's Instagram talking about like the importance of rest. And I don't want to read it word for word, but yes, I was basically talking like I think it's also it leads to the next question too of like why do we think self-care and rest is important and what does self-care and rest mean to us? A big part why rest is important for me is like like coming into college, I thought I knew what it like why it was important, right? But like I didn't really expect the many roles and the things that I had to balance. But it kind of got lost in translation. I was like, I think I know what rest is, but I don't know what rest is. But yeah, and then me, I would always try to find rest in like running towards things that will never actually give me that rest, like scrolling through YouTube. But for sometimes that like scrolling through YouTube just shuts off my brain, but mean that I'm resting. And I realized that that doesn't really give myself rest. It's just turning off my brain and I'm not doing anything.
Actively processing, yeah.
Yeah. But I realized what is really restful for me or what gives me that true rest is like is spending that time with God and journaling and praying and listening to worship music and just in that and reflecting and not necessarily not turning off my brain, of course not, but not necessarily doing things that require like so much brain power, like studying for a class and memorizing all these like terms and new concepts and like parts of the brain or parts of the anatomy and all these things, or like how one communicates and all these things. Like it's far less brain consuming or brain power, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of like how I rest and why I think or also continuing why it is important. It's like we're not created. Oh, sorry, I'm talking a lot right
Go
now.
ahead, go ahead.
But yeah, like we aren't created to always be doing things and always to be going. Like we are created to have a need to rest. And if we bypass that, then of course our body and our brain is going to tell us no, because we're not created to bypass that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like without rest, we aren't allowing ourselves that time that our body and brain needs to keep going. And that's why sleep is important. Like all the pediatricians are always saying, like this amount of sleep is important for your child because
Mm-hmm.
this is the time where that like what they've learned throughout the day is going to
Yeah,
stick with them.
yeah.
And what yeah, like and they need that time to grow. And it still applies to human adults because
Mm-hmm.
we're still growing and we're
Yeah.
still learning and we're still doing all these things. So that's why sleep is important. But my sleep schedule, well,
Mm.
I'm still getting good amount of sleep, and I can still function and do okay with the amount of sleep I get because not everybody needs 8 hours, right?
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
some people can, especially our age, like 20-year olders, we don't necessarily, not everybody needs 8.
Yeah.
Like I can function on 7 or maybe 6,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
7 is what I need most.
Yeah.
But sometimes 8, I can't even function on 8, but 7 is like
The prime.
the
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I
prime.
feel that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I agree wholeheartedly with a lot of what you said, how we need to give our brain that time to rest and like fully rest. I tell myself that watching YouTube is a break, and then I get yelled at from my mom because she's like, "That's not, you're not giving yourself a break by doing that. You're just processing a different type of, you're consuming and processing a different type of media. You're not doing academics, you're watching entertainment, but that's really not giving your brain that break that it needs." And so
Mhm.
I think it's important to let your brain have the time that it needs to rejuvenate itself. And
Mhm.
to me, I've always related self-care to mental health, and just like how we exercise to maintain our physical health, I think it's necessary to exercise, I put that in quotes, to exercise self-care to maintain our mental health. And self-care can be anything to us. There's no, like, self-care has such a wide definition that there's no one particular thing that is what self-care is supposed to be. It's what you make it. Self-care is what you choose it to be, basically. So like even between Hannah and I, we have different ideas of what self-care means to us.
Mhm.
I think overall it's just a matter of giving your brain the break from the stresses of life and the busyness of what you're doing, and allowing it to fully energize itself again.
Mhm.
And I tend to allow myself to, put on some calming music and, allow myself to really listen to my thoughts, write them out, try to figure out what my brain is telling me, and take that time to understand them. And I think that's what I have been leaning towards more and more now. And I feel like during the semester, I'm always like stuck in my books, trying to cram in all this information, like you also mentioned. And we're like putting in so much into our brain because like our brain is like a sponge. It can only take so much information in one day, and then at some point you have to wring it out so that it can take in more. And so I think that self-care or rest is important for your brain to be able to squeeze out that information and finally relax and be ready to take in more the next day.
Mm. Yeah.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I think I have one thing to add. Were you done?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay. I just didn't want to cut you off.
You're good.
But like I know that yes, like watching YouTube and like movies and streamers or any form of entertainment, yes, that can be a form of quote unquote rest, but it's not sufficient to rest.
Yeah, like to me, sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, to me, like I've never felt like even though at the end of the day, my first instinct is to go onto YouTube and like
Mhm.
watch 5 different videos, um, it it never leaves me feeling more, or it never leaves me feeling less tired than when I was.
Mhm.
It's just a way to break up my day from
Yeah.
doing schoolwork, and now I'm going to take a break for entertainment, and then I'm going to go back to schoolwork.
Yeah.
But I never find myself fully being able to wind down after a
Yeah.
long day by watching YouTube, even though that is what I do and I pass out afterwards. But it's never like, you know, I don't willingly watch YouTube to go to sleep,
Mhm.
but I will listen to music and journal and things right before bed if that's what comes to my mind.
Mhm. Yeah. So we're not saying that it's yeah, it's just more of it's not sufficient. It's not
Yeah.
the rest that you need.
Yeah.
Um
And I mean, if it works for you, great. Um, but I feel like you want to go a little bit less on the entertainment and more on trying to really figure out what it is that your brain really needs at that moment, and it
yeah.
might just not be entertainment. I think along the same lines of that, of self-care and rest, how do we try to avoid burnout, or what do we do if we feel like we are burned out?
I think one of the big things that we've talked about before in the other questions, in trying to avoid burnout, especially, is saying no to things. Yes, that's also important to do when we feel burnt out. Just keep saying no to things.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think once we break our limit, then we can't go back to our limit if we don't say no.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have to say no. I think, yeah, like one thing I realized over like doing the summer classes and also doing other things during summer and leading so many other things during summer, like I've realized what is something I can say no to,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so this summer, I know what I can say no to. And next semester, I know what I can say no to as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it just takes different situations and different experiences to know what you can say no to. Because sometimes you just don't know, like, you don't know that what you're doing is going to break your limit
Mm-hmm.
until you do it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And one thing that I've also am doing, or yeah, I kind of took the phrase from Parks and Recs. Me and Charlie love that show, but there's these two characters, Donna and Tom, where every year they have a day called Treat Yourself.
Treat yourself.
And that's like my phrase now, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
to treat yourself, like it can be as simple as like rewarding yourself after a really long week with like an ice cream,
Mm-hmm.
or or a longer time of doing nothing, or like longer time of
Yeah.
not doing schoolwork.
Mm-hmm.
Or doing something that you normally don't do.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, and one big thing is taking breaks too. I think that's also why the Pomodoro, wait,
Po- Shoot.
po,
How's it spelled?
wait.
Pomodoro. Pomodoro.
Yeah, Pomodoro technique works well is because it implements breaks, right? You're
Right.
not just continue working all that time. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think we asked for, we'll go into more details on some of the other questions that we got, but this time we asked for questions from our followers, and one of the questions that we got was, how do you deal with burnout? And this listener said that they try to get back on track, but their brain doesn't let them do that. And I just wanted to add that here since we're on the
Mhm.
topic of burnout.
Yeah.
But for me personally, along with saying no to things and taking breaks, I try to take the time to assess what caused me to burn out in the first place. And I think you touched on that a little bit. And then I try to determine how I can change my patterns to get out of that slump. So if I realize that, okay, doing one lab report for 7 hours in one day caused me to basically crash, then, I'm not going to do that the next week because I know that that is what caused me the feeling of burnout at the end of that day or at the end of that week. And I think like trying to get back on track is very difficult because without assessing what got me there in the first place, I'm just going to continue working and operating the same way I have been, and there's not going to be any shift in the way that I do things. I will just be like, okay, that's done. I'm just going to continue working the same way I have been because now that's in the past and, I'm not worried about that. So trying to really understand what led you to that situation in the first place, I think is a very helpful thing that I've been trying to incorporate more and more when I feel burnt out. And then, of course, like we mentioned, taking some time for yourself, even if it's just an hour or maybe two a day to relax, take a deep breath, and doing what you really enjoy to rejuvenate your body and your mind is one simple way to, if you're feeling stressed and you feel like you're on the verge of feeling burnt out, then just taking a step back and letting yourself relax is something. If you maintain that, I think, every day, that will prevent like a complete exhaustion. It may not prevent all of your stress, but at the very least, you know that you have taken that time during the day to take time for yourself and not be just consumed by work all the time.
Yeah.
And going back to our Parks and Rec reference, don't be like Ben and not treat yourself, because if you think back to the episode where Donna and Tom take Ben on their treat yourself journey, he breaks down crying because he's never treated himself in his life. We don't want that happening. We don't want you walking out in a Batman costume in tears. We don't need that here. So treat yourself, eat some cake, go bedazzle your elbows in Beverly Hills.
Oh my.
I've watched this show way too many times. Okay.
Yeah, like just today, I just treated myself. Like after like so long of like doing so many things and being stressed with so many things, I just stopped by the Disney store when I was at the mall trying to do all these other errands. Be like, hey, look, I've been eyeing that for a really long time. I'm gonna treat myself. I haven't bought something for myself in a long time. I'm gonna treat myself. Yeah, there you go. It can be like that too. But yeah, it doesn't have to be like go bedazzling your elbows in
I
Beverly
was
Hills.
kidding.
I know. I just wanted to bring that reference back in. It's too good.
Too broke to go to Beverly Hills.
Yeah. There's a pandemic.
Also that.
Yeah. Dude, I love that show. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. It's too good. It's too good.
Yeah, so I think continuing to answer questions from some of our listeners. So, our other question is how do you unlearn toxic habits related to burnout and neglecting mental health?
So, to me, I think it's a matter of practice and having consistent effort. So, coming from a background slash Indian culture where a lot of the times hustle harder is seen to be the best and sometimes the only way to succeed, it feels really hard to break away from that because it feels like there's this like constant pressure in the background that even if it's not there from your direct family, you just feel that in the background when you're looking at what other people are doing around you, basically. So that comparison is all like has always been there on in the back of my head. And I think it's hard to break away from that. But once you realize that it's not about always continuously working without giving yourself some time. So for me, I've been trying to take the time for myself. And like I mentioned earlier, really listen to what my thoughts are saying and give myself the permission to break away from the constant grind. Um, which even though I still probably look/feel like I'm just consistently and constantly working on things, I allow myself throw all of my work aside and like text people or, pick up my instrument or something like that, just to give myself a break. And I think we also need to be able to recognize when we are falling back into any toxic habits that we've had. And again, really push ourselves to break away from that, even though the healthier way of managing burnout and taking care of your mental health seems uncomfortable at first because it's not what you're used to. We, I think, need to realize that those are the goals or way of living, in a sense, that we want to really achieve. And it's important not to fall back into what we think is comfortable, even if it may be doing more harm than good.
Yeah. And I think to add on to that, like what you said, like practice and consistent effort, I think habits are hard to, or habits take practice and effort and consistency to form. But then breaking a habit also needs practice and consistency and effort to break. Or, yeah, yeah, my
Yeah.
words. Huh? And that also takes a lot of thinking and reflection on what are your habits that we've built, right? Because sometimes it's hard to recognize your habits that you do.
Right.
Like for me, it takes somebody to point something out to me sometimes, or it's something that I slowly realize that I do. So it takes a lot of thinking and reflection, and sometimes like have someone call you out on it, and consistently like reevaluate what your limits are,
Yeah.
because your limits change. They always are changing. Your limits
Mhm.
aren't set to one thing one for a whole year, because your situations change and your environment changes, and what you're doing always changes. So there's always no set limit. Even though a lot of people think there are,
Mhm.
wait, even though a lot of people think there is a set limit, but there's actually not. Yeah.
Yeah. And
And it's different for
sorry.
everyone. No, you're good. Yeah. It's just different for everyone.
I think one of the books that I read was called, or that I've read in the past, is called Power of Habit, and it's by Charles Duhigg, I believe is the author's name. And I think so. His book goes into a lot of details on what habit forming looks like and why certain habits form so much faster than others, and why it's harder to break um, bad habits and replace them with good habits. And I think a quote that goes along the lines of what we both just talked about is change might not be fast and it isn't always easy, but with time and effort, almost any habit can be reshaped.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's not about, so I think the way the question was phrased about how we unlearn toxic habits is a good way to put it, because we're not, there's really no way that we can get rid of a habit once it's
Mm-hmm.
there. We just have
Yeah.
to reshape the way that we see it and we apply it into our lives.
Mm.
So time and effort, and really, like you said, reflecting on what our habits are and how we should change them to help benefit us more than harm us.
Mm-hmm.
And our last listener question, which by the way, thank you guys for sending those in. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Was this is slightly reworded, but if trying or working to be your best is enough, when do you know that you have tried your best and that you have reached your best level?
Yeah. I think this question really relates to what I said in 2 episodes ago, where I was talking about how if you tried your best, then it's okay. And that was in context of like studying and grades and taking tests and all that. And I think that it applies to a lot of things. Where if you try your best, then it's okay. So I think this question it's actually it's a really good question too. Um, but sometimes it's hard to know if you've done enough or if you tried your best. Um, but at the end of the day, if you've put in the amount of effort that you could have during that time, like during that set time, then that's enough, right? Like,
Mhm.
let's say like you're super tired and you've been doing all these other things that you've been doing, like running errands or worrying about other things going on in your life or working on other things in your life, then and then you come down to doing schoolwork or something like that, and you put in what you can during that time, and that's enough because you can't pour out more of what you don't have, right?
Mhm.
And if you try to pour out more of what you don't have, then you're already burnt out because you don't have what you're pouring out,
Mhm.
right? And that's why
Right.
on you can't run on a
You can't run on credit, like
or
in the sense,
more like a car cannot run on an empty tank
right?
because it doesn't have that fuel, right? And
Yeah.
it's burnt out. It's literally
Mhm.
burnt out because it doesn't have that fuel, right?
Mhm.
So if you do have fuel, like there's like a car, I'm gonna bring the car analogy back. You have a meter of how much fuel you have and how much mileage you can get with that fuel, right? You can't go farther than that
Mhm.
because your car is just gonna die.
Because right.
Yeah, so like I think that this analogy is kind of like it's not my it's not the best analogy, but it works, I think,
Yeah.
hopefully. But as long as you think that you've had put in all that fuel,
Mhm.
then you already did your best because you can't do more than your best and you can't
Right.
do more than what you have already.
Mhm.
All right. Let's say like right now with my brain running on low and I'm trying to work on a something really important. Well, I mean this podcast is important, but something like a big presentation.
Yeah.
If I try to do that right now, my best is probably be the intro. Like
Right.
that's probably my best, right?
Mhm.
And if I'm studying for a test, my best can probably be like one or two like reviewing one or two chapters, and that's my best because I can't there's nothing more I can
Mhm. Yeah.
pull out. And I
Right.
think that's like one thing that our high school kind of twisted is that you always had to like do more,
Yeah.
more and study more.
Yeah.
Studying this amount is not enough.
Right.
Only looking over this is not enough. You have to do more. You have
Yeah.
to put in more effort. This is not enough. Your
Yeah.
grade's not enough. You have to do more. Right? And I think that's why grades are really weird because, like, the grades don't necessarily reflect how hard you've tried.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and that's why grading system is really weird. And yeah, that's a whole other. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I just talked for forever. But that, my car analogy,
Yeah,
yay.
no, I think your car analogy really ties into some of the other things that we talked about especially like knowing your limits.
Mhm.
Because I think what you're saying, like you have to know your limit because if you surpass that, then you're basically running on negative fuel.
Mhm.
And there's no such thing as negative fuel after a certain point. You hit zero and you're empty at that. The fuel is gone.
Yeah.
Um, but I think for me, this is like I really don't think there's a straightforward answer to
Yeah,
this.
no, there isn't. Yeah.
Um, because I personally will always have another goal that I'm like striving towards.
Mhm.
So if we're speaking technically, that means that I would have never reached my best in this. And again, put best in quotes.
Yeah.
Because I know that there's always a next step.
Yeah.
So I think of, even when I'm tutoring, I think of things as like a ladder. And this is how I explain to the kids that I'm tutoring also that, hey, we're climbing up a ladder here. You have been, because these kids, like, they aren't too interested in learning like English language arts, but that's what I'm like there to like help them focus on. And it takes a lot of effort into trying to get them to move on to the next level because they think it's really difficult. But the way that I think about it is we're on a ladder that only goes up. And if we have figured out that we have mastered a certain level, then the only way that we can continue to improve is by going up the ladder. And so we have to be, I guess, to realize that, okay, we have mastered something or we are good at something, we have to be satisfied with where we are and allow ourselves to be proud of what we have achieved and acknowledge how far we have come, and then use that to fuel yourself going up that ladder. And this is one way that I've encouraged the kids that I tutor to, hey, we've been doing like 2-paragraph stories. Now let's maybe move to a 4-paragraph. They're like, oh, that's so long. It's so hard. I'm not going to be able to do it. And I'm like, listen, you have been doing these 2 paragraphs for like 3 weeks. You have done really good at it. Now we need to remember that ladder I was telling you about? We have to keep going. And they're like, really? Like I've mastered this? And I was like, yeah, I mean, look at yourself. And they're like, wow, okay, we'll move up the ladder then. And so that, it's like, we know we have reached our best when we allow ourselves to feel that, I think. Wow, that was profound. Okay. We have to allow ourselves to acknowledge that, we have reached a level in whatever it is that we are doing that we are very happy of. And now we want to continue growing and allow ourselves to reach a new level. Yeah, I think for me, my analogy is always a ladder of, okay, I'm at one, is it called a rung? Like a rung on a ladder? Words are weird. A step on a ladder, that's what I'm going to say. There's an actual word for it that I can't really think of. We're at one step. We stay there until we need to do whatever it is that we need to do on that one step. Once we feel like we've achieved those, we acknowledge that, and then we proceed forward and we continue to climb up.
I think that also relates with growth. We're never done growing because we always have the potential to be
better.
I'm trying to think of a different way to phrase it, but we're always growing. Like we're never done learning.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were never necessarily we
never really plateau. We're always, when it comes to growth and learning. Yeah. There's always something new, and it's up to us to try to go after that.
Yeah, but that's besides the point.
Yes, sorry.
No, you're good. No. I'm saying like I went besides the point. Sorry. I didn't mean to say it that way.
No, but you're good. No.
I talked about growth, and I mean I think it relates. Like what you're saying relates to. Yeah. But on the sense of like balance, our last question or point that we wanted to hit on in this episode is just like general advice in maintaining a decent balance. Yeah, like we're not saying that we've nailed it, but we're still trying. So yeah.
I think one of the things that I personally have not tried this because, well, I don't really know why I haven't, but I know of others who will schedule time for their hobbies into their day-to-day list of into their day-to-day to-dos, basically. And that enforces that idea of, okay, I need to cross this off of my list, therefore I will take the time to practice practice my instrument or do some art or cook some food or something like that, you know? So you're like basically scheduling time for your hobbies. But for me personally, when it comes to balance, my main focus goes towards my academics and then my like just physical well-being. So like food, hydration, sleep, like those are my top focuses. So I know for a fact that I really can't skip a meal. I need my 3 meals. And I know that if I don't have that, I will not be as productive as I want to be. So I prioritize having my meals, staying hydrated throughout the day, um, sometimes having a snack. I attempt to not stay up too late. Been something that, you know, it's like I tell myself that I'll work on it, but then YouTube is addicting. So.
I'm not
But
good at that.
but I think one thing that I also just want to work at in general is keeping up with my hobbies over a busy semester, because I find myself to kind of throw those to the side because I'm like, those aren't really important right now. But one thing that I do want to work on is telling myself that, you know, your hobbies are important assets to who you are. And it's important for you to be able to maintain them because those are your outlets.
Mm-hmm.
And throwing those aside doesn't really do you any good.
Mm-hmm.
I guess along those lines, like prioritizing, I guess, is like a general way to put it. Prioritize what it is that you want to put your focus on, and then basically go from there. It's not the greatest of advice because, like Hannah said, we haven't nailed it. We still struggle with this and getting overly stressed out and then cramming work and then taking like 2 entire days off because you've been working so hard for the past like 4 days. That's a very common cycle that I've gone through. And it's hopefully eventually I'll get to a point where I'm not doing that. But that's not where I'm at right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, yes, priorities is a big thing, and setting a routine and a schedule is helpful. It's a little harder to stick to that right now, especially being at home. Um, I didn't stick much to my schedule that I set for myself when everything was before the pandemic happened, but like I set aside time, be like, okay, this is how much time I get to wake up, get ready, eat, and pray, and like not just wake up at like 5 minutes before I need to do something, but like, well, I mean, I'm talking about my ideal situation right now, and like actually have a set schedule of my classes, or well, my set schedule is my class, but and like having a designated time of lunch, like lunch and chill, and then class again, and then like set aside time, like this amount of time at this time I'm exercising, and then I shower right after, and after that I spend time with God, and then right after that I chill or do homework or work on the podcast or anything before dinner, and then do homework after dinner, and then sleep. But that's a little harder when it's hard to have a routine.
Right.
And what I also found that is helpful instead of having a set schedule like that is, yeah, like to do lists. Like if you can't necessarily stick to a routine like me, I can't really stick to it anymore.
Yeah.
I've never really been able to.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been really good at it. Um, I a to-do list has been really helpful. It's actually like oh, my words. It's really satisfying to check things off once you've done it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I've tried different ways, like setting a to-do list on my calendar or my agenda, my physical planner, and just like saying, okay, I have to do this for this and all these things. And now I do one on an online website
Yes.
where I can just check off and type what to-dos I have for the week or for the
Mhm.
day. And that also keeps me accountable on what I have to do and what I'm prioritizing, because
Mm.
I can bold and I can highlight and I can do all these like things to them, and
Yeah.
um yeah, and but actually have a set time.
Mhm.
um but when you said sleep schedule, I'm not, well, I don't really sleep early, so I don't know.
Yeah,
I Everybody's sleep schedule is different.
yes.
Like for me, like my when I was living in an apartment in the dorm, my roommate, um, she would sleep at like 10:30,
Mhm.
or a little
Wow.
later, and she'll wake up really early at like
Ah,
6 or 7. I don't really
okay.
remember, but she wakes
Yeah.
up really early.
Okay.
Um, and then for me, I slept at like 12 or 2, and then would wake up at like, well, 8 if I had an 8:30, or like
Mhm.
9 or 10. Um, so everybody's sleep schedule is different, and everything works different for everyone.
Right.
Like
Yes.
I'm most productive at night. That's
Mhm.
why I get get most of my work done at night.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I think figuring that out is helpful too.
There was
Yeah.
something else I wanted to add, but it slipped out of my head.
No, you're good. You're good. I think with all that being said, like what we've said, like in the past, almost I think an hour and 30, maybe two
Yeah.
hours. I didn't keep track of time, but is grace. Have grace on yourself, and like,
That is what I wanted to say.
okay, yeah, yeah. Like it's okay if you've missed a to do on your list, or you've missed a day on doing something, because yeah, like you don't have to beat yourself up about it.
Yeah.
But
Yes, that is
since it was
exactly what
your
I wanted to
point,
say.
what else do you want to add on?
So yeah, I mean, it's okay if you like lose track of things at certain points. Um, Especially now, being in like, yeah, the pandemic has been going on for almost a year now, which is
Oh
bizarre
my,
to think about, but
oh my.
still face so many challenges because we're still trying to adjust to this new environment. So, as just allow yourself to take rest days that are unplanned.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
far, we've been talking about planned rest days, but if you feel like you're just not going to be productive, don't try to force yourself into productivity
yeah.
because that will take up so much more of your energy that you can instead use that day to help rejuvenate yourself and then fuel your work for the next day. So it's it's okay to have unplanned rest days, I
Yeah,
think is what I'm getting at. It's
yeah,
good to have planned ones, but it's okay to have unplanned ones as well.
yeah, yeah. I think, where was I going? My brain. Oh my goodness.
We need to get Hannah to bed.
Um, I'm probably gonna stay up until like 1 or 2.
Of course you will.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm not. I don't think it was anything important besides having grace on yourself.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was a very good note to end on. Thank you for bringing that up. Because I was like thinking about it, and then as soon as you finished talking, I was like, wait, what? Something like I had a whole thing going through my head,
Yeah,
and then it just like left. I was like,
yeah.
okay.
I think
Um,
like being like gracious on yourself too. It's better for you, like caring for yourself,
yes.
and it ties back to resting and self care and mental health. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, we're not experts on this at all.
Nope.
These are just our experiences, and we are also still doing a lot of learning
Yeah.
and trying to figure out what works best for us.
Yeah.
So I feel like it'll be really interesting, like years down the line, like thinking back to what we thought self-care and rest was now in 2021 and look like 2025, what is self-care to us then?
Yeah.
I feel like that'd be interesting to look back upon because I know things have changed for me over the past like few years. So
Yeah. Dude, I'm gonna be in a work field by then.
I'll still be in school.
Oh
Woo!
my goodness.
Oh
I'm
my God.
excited.
Me too. I'm excited to stay in school.
Oh.
Woo. No, I'm
I'm
kidding. I'm
excited
excited to be doing lab work. That's what I'm excited for.
Yeah.
Pipetting is fun.
Huh?
I said pipetting is fun.
But I'm actually really interested in what I'm learning anyways, so well, that will
Yeah.
be for another episode too. Wait, when would that be? That's
I have.
in like
Wait, do
3?
we have an episode for
Yeah.
that? Oh,
Number 9? No, no, number 7? 7.
hold on.
Yeah, number 7. The last one we planned.
Oh,
Okay.
anywho's, I think with that, we can wrap up this week's episode. Hopefully, I think this one will be shorter than our last episode. Sorry, not sorry for an entire 2 hours, but you know, we just had a lot of things to say about college and high school. But
Yeah.
thank you guys for listening this week, and we'll see y'all in 2 weeks.
Bye. If you have any questions for us, feel free to email us at rewritethetimespodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook at Rewrite the Times.